Welcome and thank you for joining the Lake County Community Foundation's 2020 Grant Writing Technical Assistance webinar. This is Emily Weber. I am the Manager of Community Leadership and Investment at the Foundation. So again, welcome. We have some significant changes coming to our 2020 grant cycle, so we really just wanted to walk you through some of these changes. The same information that is presented in this webinar was also presented at the Technical Assistance Workshop held on January 6th over at Condell in Libertyville. So this webinar is really intended for those who weren't able to make it, but also for those who were able to make it and want to use this as a tool and a resource to refer back to. So with that, I wanted to start off by telling you just a little bit about the foundation if you are new to us. The Lake County Community Foundation is an affiliate of the Chicago Community Trust, and we are a public charity that serves all of Lake County. And our mission is really to improve the quality of life for our most vulnerable residents across the county. And we do that through a couple of different ways. We partner with our grant recipients, we provide community leadership, and then we also promote collective philanthropy with our donors as well. So really one of our goals is to be a good resource for all of you in the nonprofit sector and really support you in any way that we can. We know what important work you are doing to meet very critical needs across the county. So again, we want to be there as a support to you all. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. We are going to talk a little bit about our competitive grant making process overview, changes to our 2020 cycle, our priority areas, and then we will talk a little bit about outcomes and outputs as well. So this is just a very brief summary of our grant making process, and we'll delve into each of these kind of sections here in just a minute, but to give you a very brief and broad overview, the foundation's process is simple, straightforward, and very transparent. So we have our request for proposals released, proposals are submitted, we go through a due diligence process, grants are either approved or declined, and then we move into reporting. So again, we'll talk more about each of these, but one thing to note is that organizations can receive funding for 3 consecutive years before they are required to take a rest year. That policy may change in the future, but for now, for 2020, that policy will remain the same as it has in years past. So we'll dig a little deeper into our process now. The grant timeline has already been announced through website. If you would like more information, check out our website, lakecountycf.org. Under Apply, there's a ton of information on there. Applications are open. They are open for the basic human needs cycle as of right now. Again, we'll talk more about cycles and timelines here in a minute. The one thing to note is that the applications are available on our website now. We are no longer using the Grant Central system. So again, those applications will be available on the website. And then our grant applications are due, again, submitted via email. And then we really move into our due diligence process. And to back up just a bit, throughout this whole process as a foundation, it's really important for us to build consensus amongst our staff, our grants committee, and our board as well. And our grants committee is comprised of both board members and community members too. So again, that goal is really to have consensus amongst staff, committee, and board. So within our due diligence process, this is really the time where we reach out to collect additional information from you all. This is where we will invite organizations to participate in site visits. Our site visit process is pretty informal. Staff are always at a site visit, and they're typically accompanied by 1 to 2 either grants committee members or board members. And again, that's really a time for us just to learn more about your work and get to know you a little bit better. Sometimes we do them at our office, sometimes we do them at yours. It just kind of depends on what works out. Organizations must complete a site visit in order to receive funding from us. After the site visits are completed, we will create write-ups with some recommendations, which we then take to our grants committee. And this is where the grants committee will convene. They'll review those recommendations and the proposals and then decide to either approve or decline those recommendations. They will typically have additional questions for the organization, so staff will follow up to get those questions answered. After those final recommendations from the grants committee are made, we then complete final write-ups and disseminate those to the full board of directors. And then the board obviously votes on the funding recommendations brought forth by the grants committee. As soon as the board votes on those funding recommendations, we typically try to notify nonprofits who were both awarded and declined the next day. So we really try to do that as soon as we can. After the notifications, we then kind of move into our grant administration and reporting. And this is where the grant agreements are due. We'll talk more about that specifically here in a minute. Payments are dispersed, and then we move to the midterm and year-end reports as well. Something to note, we are talking through modifications to our reporting requirements for 2020. It will look different than the Grant Central reporting you've seen in the past, obviously, because we won't be using that system. We are cognizant that you all have very tight staffs and multifunctional jobs, so we want to keep it simple and streamlined for you all. So we may be looking at a midterm report of something like a one-pager with some highlights. We may do a final report of some kind of brief narrative along with a meeting, because really we'd like to just sit down with you and have a conversation about what worked, what didn't, what opportunities you see within your work as well. So again, that's something that we're continuing to talk about, but we'll have some more definite terms here in the next few months. All right, so changes to our 2020 grant making process. Here's the good stuff. As some of you know, my first year at the foundation was last year. I started in April, and I came right in the middle of the cycle. So I had an opportunity to work with the staff and board and the grants committee to kind of think through some recommendations on how to make things run a bit more smoothly and make things more manageable. So we've brought forth some of these changes for 2020. So again, we'll talk about each of these in more depth, but to give you an overview, we are looking at splitting the foundation's one competitive cycle into 2 cycles with new timelines. We're looking at a new leadership development priority area. We are looking at that simplified email application process, again, relating to Grant Central, and new application assistance as well. So we will dive right in to these. We will have 2 grant competitive making cycles starting in 2020. So historically, the foundation has had only 1 competitive grant cycle to encompass all of its priority areas. So basic human needs, early childhood education, animal welfare, and our proactive strategy as well. Going forward, we will split those priority areas into 2 separate cycles. So we'll have basic human needs, and that will open in January with very similar timeline to previous cycles. So for the majority of people, you won't see a whole lot of difference here, because basic human needs is typically where we receive the most applications. We'll then split our early childhood education, animal welfare, and new leadership development priority areas into a late summer cycle that will open in mid-July. So we will talk more about the timelines of those now, just so you have these on your brain. So again, for the basic human needs, this is not changing much to previous cycles. We provided an additional 2 weeks for organizations to complete the application. Considering changes, we figured that you all may have some questions, so wanted to provide you with some additional time to make sure that those are taken care of. So the cycle opened on January 20th, and it is now available on our website for the basic human needs application. Proposals are due by March 2nd by midnight via email. I would recommend trying to send them before 11:59, just to make sure everything goes through, especially considering this is kind of a new process. So again, if you can get that in a day or so before the deadline, I think that would be great. The foundation's due diligence process will run March through May, and again, that's where we're doing our site visits and reaching out for additional questions. The grant awards will be determined by the board of directors or somewhere around May 22nd. We will notify grant recipients by May 25th. And then this is a really important date to note, this June 10th. This is when grant agreements are due. So because we're an affiliate of the Chicago Community Trust, we use their kind of back office system for check disbursements. So they need this grant agreement due, signed and turned in order to cut the checks on June 20th. So if you miss this June 10th date, then we have to wait another 4 to 6 weeks, I believe, to get your check cut. So again, that's really important. The grant agreement is very simple. It comes through an email. It's a very quick e-signature. You e-sign and then hit send and you'll be good to go. So again, make sure you keep that June 10th date in mind. All right, so for the early childhood, animal welfare, and leadership development cycles, this is the same process as basic human needs. The basic human needs cycle is just a bit of a different timeline. So it will open July 15th. Again, posted to our website. Applications will be due by September 1st. This should say September through November will be our due diligence process. The board of directors will vote somewhere around December 2nd, and then we will notify nonprofits of the decisions by the 4th. And again, this is a quicker turnaround for the grant agreements due, but those will be due on the 10th in order to get the checks dispersed on the 20th. So again, those grant agreement dates are pretty important. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about this new leadership development priority area. This is something that our organization is really excited about. Over the last few years, the foundation has really identified a critical need to invest in high quality, accessible and relevant leadership development opportunities to help support Lake County's kind of broader nonprofit sector. Within our county, we've got some really high capacity nonprofit leaders who are preparing for and entering retirement. So there's really this urgent need to cultivate a pipeline of talent who have the capacity and the confidence to kind of step in and lead Lake County's nonprofit sector into the future. So we have funded projects that would fall under this priority area in the past, but we're kind of formalizing it now to put a stake in the ground and say, we are committed to funding this. This is important for our nonprofit sector in the county. So again, it's something we're really excited about. So a few things to note about this priority area. The foundation, as many of you know, really values coalition building and collaboration. So we are looking to fund projects that benefit the county's kind of greater nonprofit sector. So again, focusing on kind of cohorts rather than specifically individual nonprofits. So we're looking for projects that help build, again, that pipeline of competent and emerging leaders, increases access for leaders of color to programming. We really want our leadership in Lake County to reflect the makeup of Lake County. That's important to our foundation. And then work that also builds the overall capacity of the county's nonprofit sector as well. All right, so I wanted to give you a few examples of some projects that have been funded under this priority area, again, before it was kind of formalized. So in the past, we have funded the Charmed Foundation's Leadership Academy. And Charmed is an organization that provides leadership development and training opportunities to leaders of tax-exempt organizations in both Cook and Lake counties. So again, the foundation supported the Leadership Academy, and that's a multi-year program for those who are new to leadership or are being considered for a leadership role within the next couple of years. So we provided funds to cover half the cost for select Lake County nonprofits to participate in the program. So the cost of the program is $500. The foundation covered $250. So hopefully that has made it more accessible to nonprofits who often have tight budgets for opportunities like this. And we like this project example because, again, it's sector-wide, it affects many different organizations, and it's really working to build that pipeline of emerging leaders. Another organization we have funded in the past is Mano a Mano's Liderazgo initiative. And this is really the first leadership development program of its kind, focused on cultivating talents and minds and the networks of emerging leaders of specifically Latino communities in Lake County. So again, this is focused more on that cohort idea, and again, building that that cohort and pipeline of emerging leaders as well. So you'll notice in this little funding level guidance box, we are looking for projects up to $5,000 and possibly up to 5 grants. That up to 5 grants is kind of fluid as of now, until we have firmer numbers for our pool of funds. But that's about what we're looking at. So we'll have more information on our website about this leadership development priority area soon. But if you have questions about it, please reach out. I'll have my contact information here at the end of the presentation. Don't hesitate to give me a call and we can kind of talk through what you're thinking about. Oh, and just a quick note, just examples of a few things that we're not particularly interested in funding for an individual to earn a degree. So we wouldn't necessarily be interested in funding a nonprofit employee to go get their master's in nonprofit management or something like that. Board development for a single nonprofit. Again, we're looking for kind of that broader impact, and nonprofit participation in conferences as well. All right, so to talk a bit more about our simplified application process, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we are no longer going to use the Grant Central system. So we'll be moving to a Word document application with email submission. So again, this is, here's a screenshot of where it's available on our website. If you just go to lakecountycf.org and click apply or how to apply, it'll take you to the same page actually. You will notice, you can't miss it, the application's right there, as is the RFP as well. Something to note, this is an interim process until we move to a new grants management system. I imagine this will be a 1 to 2 year, again, interim process until we find something that it's gonna work for the long term for the organization. We've worked to tighten up the application just a little bit, just to make it a bit more succinct. So hopefully you'll find that a bit easier. And then, yeah, the application will be open on the first day of each cycle. So again, when the midsummer cycle for early childhood education, animal welfare, and leadership development open in July, it'll be available on July 15th. And just a note and a plea, please make sure that you include all requested information. New in the application, we included a checklist to ensure that, to give you a tool to go back and look to make sure that you attached all of the required information. The cycles have become very competitive. As some of you know, we had a record-breaking year in 2019. We had almost 60 applications, which is more than double what we typically receive in a year. So again, it's a competitive process. So it's really important to provide all the information that we are requesting to ensure that you aren't disqualified. All right, for new application assistance, you are listening to it. So this is the first time we have provided a technical assistance webinar. And again, it's intended to be a resource for back to about these changes. And will be posted on our social media, website, and newsletter. Obviously, you know that because you accessed it. So we'd love feedback about this. If you found it useful, if there's additional information that you wish we would have covered, certainly reach out and let me know. All right, to talk a bit more about our priority areas, I wanted to start off with our proactive grant making strategy. So this strategy was new in 2017, and this was the first time that the foundation launched something like this. It was a multi-year initiative that they heavily invested in. So they went out and through a whole stakeholder interview and process, identified access to affordable, nutritious food as their funding focus area. So then they proactively went out and invited Liberty Prairie Foundation and the Northern Illinois Food Bank to collaboratively work on this, which they've been doing since 2017. This specific funding priority around access to affordable nutritious food is sunsetting. 2019 was the last year last year for this particular funding priority around access to affordable nutritious food. So we will be taking a rest year in 2020 for this priority area. So the foundation will neither invite nor accept proposals under this proactive strategy. So during that time, because this was a pilot, in 2020, we're really going to be looking at evaluating how this pilot went, identifying what worked and what didn't, and what opportunities we have moving forward. And then we will also work to identify a new funding priority area within this proactive strategy. And we anticipate that that will launch in 2021. So again, applications for this priority area will always be made available by invitation only. And one note about this, while this proactive strategy around access to affordable, nutritious food is sunsetting, we will still accept proposals related to food access and hunger, certainly under our basic human needs priority area, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But we obviously know that hunger remains an issue in Lake County and is certainly a basic human need that we want to address. So, speaking of basic human needs, this cycle again opened in January. And the basic human needs priority area is typically our largest pool of funds and where we get the most applications. And we really try to cover a broad body of work under this priority area. So we'll cover anything or fund anything from domestic violence, homelessness, mental and behavioral health, hunger, education, and much more. So we're really trying to meet a variety of basic needs around the county. So we are looking for projects that support new innovative approaches to meet those basic human needs, that address barriers to access of basic services and benefits to Lake County's most vulnerable residents, And that otherwise address otherwise unmet basic needs as the only service provider in the area. So as a foundation, we recognize that there are deserts of service areas in the county, so we want to make sure that we're meeting that need as well. You'll notice on this funding level guidance box, we're looking for proposals up to $20,000 and possibly up to 10 grants. Now this looks a little bit different than 2019. In 2019, we granted smaller amounts, averaging probably $8,000 to $9,000 to several different organizations. In 2020, our strategy is changing a bit. We would like to do fewer grants in larger amounts. So we recognize that you all can do more with more funds. So, and that goes, speaks to the impact you're able to make, which then speaks to the impact of our grant making. So that will be our strategy moving forward. So again, projects up to $20,000 and possibly up to 10. And we're really trying to fund all over the county as well. We want to make sure that, we do serve all of Lake County, so we want to make sure that our grant making reflects that as well. All right, to our next priority area around early childhood education. Again, this is that midsummer cycle, so this will open July 15th. And it is aptly named. It's to promote early childhood education ages 0 to 5 in Lake County. So to give you just an example of a few organizations we've funded in the past, for the last 3 years, we have funded Twice as Nice Mother and Child, which is a diaper bank and really meets basic needs of these families and children. If the kids don't have diapers to get to daycare or preschool, if the parents can't provide those, then, they can't go to preschool. So we want to make sure that they have those basic needs met. So Twice as Nice is doing a great job with that. Last year, we also funded AAUW Preschool in Waukegan, and we hope to support their plan for a new outdoor classroom space, which has really encouraged kids to stay active and explore and get outside, which has all kinds of health and wellness benefits as well. So we're looking for proposals up to $10,000 and possibly up to 2 grants in that particular priority area. For animal welfare, again, it's that midsummer cycle, opens July 15th. Just to back up a little bit, when the Humane Society in Lake County shut down several years ago, the foundation received the assets of that group, and then a judge determined that 16% of those annual distributions should be made to organizations that are attending to needs of animals in Lake County. So that's kind of where this priority has come from. A couple of examples of what we funded in the past. We have funded Spay and Stay for a few years. That's an organization that is working to control the feral cat population in Lake County. Last year, we funded Partners for Progress and provided some funds to provide supportive care for their horses so that they can really be at their best for their clients with special needs. And again, we're looking for proposals around, up to $5,000 and possibly up to 3 grants. All right, so that rounds out our priority areas. I did want to take a minute and just touch on outcomes versus outputs. Something over the last few years that we've noticed in the proposals is just some confusion about the outcomes section. So we worked to clarify that in this 2020 application. But to just give you a brief summary, the outputs are, they really tell the story of what you produced or your organization's activities. So they're not really addressing the value or the impact of the services on your clients. And the outcome is the level of performance or achievement that occurred because of the activity you provided. So as an example, this is an example from the Northern Illinois Food Bank. So their outputs are the number of meals distributed in Lake County, number of people served, which leads to the outcome. Nutritious food will be available to food insecure families in Lake County at no cost through food pantries and mobile pantries as well. So again, those outputs, it's the numbers, the statistics, your activities, and then the outcome really answers, so what? Well, so what, food will be available. That's the what and the context. Another quick example from NIFB, number of classes provided and number of people participating in the whole body approach classes. So the outcome of those outputs is adults at risk of chronic disease will improve knowledge of healthy eating through whole body approach classes. So that improved knowledge is really the key in that outcome. And then for one more quick example, this is from Mother's Trust last year. So again, their outputs, number of children who participate in summer camp, and then number of weeks children participate in summer camp. Those are their numbers, statistics, and then their outcome is children's learning and development is uninterrupted by summer break as they receive stimulating and fun educational opportunities. So that's their context, that's their so what from their activities and their outputs. So hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. If you have questions as you're working through your proposal, don't hesitate to reach out. And speaking of questions, here is my contact information. Again, always happy to answer emails or chat, whichever you find easiest. So please let me know if you have questions as you are working through your proposal. So thank you so much for listening to this webinar, and hopefully you found this a useful tool. Again, always open to feedback moving forward if you have suggestions about what the next webinar should cover for the next cycle. So again, thank you for listening, and let me know if you have questions.